I could remember being in the library in junior high with a bunch of friends. We were talking about, hey, what do you want to do when you're older? And I said I wanted to be a comedian. And I remember everybody laughed. And I remember thinking, oh, this is easy. You know what I mean? That was like my first laugh.
Live from the Willie Nelson and Friends Museum Showcase in Nashville, Tennessee. It's Music is Funny. Musicians talking to comedians about music and comedy. With your hosts, Raelyn Nelson and Jonathan Bright.
I'm still smoking, I'm so high, I keep toking, I'm drunk, but I'm still drinking too.
Welcome back to Music is Funny. I'm Raelyn Nelson.
And I'm Jonathan Bright from the Raelyn Nelson Band, back with another ridiculous and unnecessary intro.
A Juston McKinney.
Hello, hello.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going great. How are you?
Good. I'm Raelyn.
Nice to meet you, Raelyn.
And this is my co-host, JB.
Hey, man. Nice to meet you.
What's up, JB? Nice to meet you.
Doing good.
Thanks for doing this with us.
No, thank you, man. Thanks for having me.
So, just want to say, don't be afraid to be silly and funny. Don't censor yourself. If you say something that you want us to take out later, we totally will. Just, we're trying to have a good time, and it's not a serious thing at all.
Got it. And is it, are you using I'm assuming you're using the video and the audio, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Because that's quite a set. Because I'm going to say, if you weren't using that set, that'd be a waste.
So we're here in Nashville at my grandpa's museum. It's on Music Valley Drive right by Opryland. So it's kind of left over from Opryland theme park kind of days, but this is what do you always call this wood? I always call
plywood.
It plywood, and it looks like it's a bus,
Stop
but it's
giving away all the secrets. Right,
it's actually just it is our tour bus, or Papa Willie's tour bus.
I picked it up. I got it. Yep, it comes through. I'm in a hotel in Florida right now. So.
All right. Where in Florida?
Orlando.
Okay.
It's a nice hotel room.
Yeah, it's every once in a while, as you know, being musicians, and sometimes you get treated really well. Sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
It just happens to be a good one. It's a JW Marriott Grand,
nice.
And it's a corporate gig, and doing stand-up, there's all kinds of private gigs you do, and the best ones are the corporate ones that, and they're even like, hey, put your food on the bill, So you'll have that extreme, and then I'll have other ones where, they're like, they don't feed you, they got nothing, you're in the green room, there's not even a snack,
Yeah. I hear you.
You'll get a lot of those for sure.
Okay.
Corporate gigs are great, though.
Yeah.
Nobody's really paying you the
Money.
money. Somebody way beyond everybody's paying the money. And that was good as well.
Yeah. Okay. So we always start every podcast off by asking, what's the first music you remember loving as a kid?
Very first.
Well, I have to say, maybe the soundtrack from Grease.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I just remember that movie. So some of the stuff that was in there, if I had to think about it, I'd probably say that's definitely my earliest musical memory of a I would have to go with Grease.
Okay.
It's not bad for the first one.
I know, that's good. The great songs in Grease. What's your favorite one from that one, the soundtrack?
Probably, what's the slow one?
Hopelessly Devoted.
Hopelessly Devoted.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was like, you know what I mean? It was like, it had a lot of motion. I tear up at stuff anyway. So, you know what I mean? Like even watching, the whole thing, she just passed, Olivia Newton-John, which is so sad.
R.I.P.
And I actually liked her before she got all made up at the end, which is, I don't know if I'm in the majority there, but I didn't like the whole tight pants, high heels, makeup. Like I liked her before.
Yeah. She's hot and gorgeous the whole way through, right?
Great singer. She was very underrated for a singer.
Yeah. I used to watch that movie, and I would rewind it to that song and sing it with my remote as the microphone, with her.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I really liked that one too.
Well, I think I used to try to sing. It was funny. I thought I wanted to be a singer. Ironically. Yeah. And I'd had my parents, I'd gotten a hold of an electric guitar somehow when I was probably in maybe 6th grade. And had the electric guitar. I was going to take lessons, and I wanted to be a singer. And I could not. I hit puberty, I think is what happened. And my voice just changed to the point of it was so bad that like when I would sing, people would make faces. Like, you know what I mean? They try to be supportive, but you could just see it on their face. And I'm like, what? And and you don't know what you sound like to yourself. Coming from you, it sounds like just like what's on the radio, what I'm doing.
This is a classic Peter Brady story right here.
Yeah, exactly. I was a big fan of the Brady Bunch too.
Me too.
Me too.
But that was I could remember. So then I never even learned how to play the guitar. If you could imagine, if I couldn't sing, I didn't want to play an instrument. I wanted to sing, and I don't know what it was. So that's maybe why I got into comedy, because I needed a microphone. I can't sing.
Yeah.
So let me give this joke thing a whirl.
What about songwriting? Did you ever try to write a song?
Oh, it's funny you mentioned that. I always have song ideas. I always thought that I could write songs too. So yeah, I wrote this one I could remember in 5th grade. It was before I even moved. I wrote a song called Don't Judge Me. I know nothing about nothing. I've just always remembered it was called Stingy Woman was the name of it. And it was just, I just still remember it to this day. Like I always remembered it, but it was just like this little thing I did with my friends. We just kind of wrote this song, and that was the first time I ever remember one. But more recently, Joseph Gallant, he's a country singer that lives up in New England. And a few years ago, he's on my podcast, and I told him about my dog had died on Thanksgiving Day. So I wrote this song called Thanksgiving Day about my dog. And he played some of it on my podcast. Long story short, I asked him, I go, has there ever been a song about a dog dying? I mean, and he's like, no, I can't think of, this is him, the country song. He's like, I can't think because he's a country singer. And he goes, I can't think. Well, anyway, Chris Stapleton, like a year or two later, came out with that Maggie's song or whatever that was like up for Song of the Year or something. So I'm like, man, I thought so anyway, I mean, I just dabble. Look, if we all have dreams to do what we're not doing, right? And if I could have done it, I would be a songwriter, probably, and a musician if I wasn't a comedian.
You heard it here first. Chris Stapleton stole his song and took off.
I don't think he listened. I don't think he caught caught my podcast. There was only 43 viewers, 43 downloads, I mean. So unless he was
he might have been one of them.
Unless he was one of those 43.
Okay, so going back to early years, your mom and dad, what were they listening to? Did you have a mom and dad?
Well, first of all, you said before you moved, where did you move from? Oh, yeah, and did you have a mom and dad? That's
did you have a mom and dad?
Well, I had a mom and dad up until I was 6 years old. My mom passed.
Okay.
So I was living in a town called Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and my mom passed away at 6, so it's a little bit of a dysfunctional situation. And then I talk about it in my act a lot, that my mom's sister then moved in and ended up in a relationship with my dad.
Oh my God.
And brought some of her kids. So there was a dad, an aunt, 2 cousins, and 4 brothers in this house in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And then when I got out of the 5th grade, we moved literally the next town over, but it was the next state into the state of Maine. It was two miles away from my old house to my new house. And we'd moved right there. So that was where we kind of grew up. So some of the music that I remember them listening to was, especially my aunt was really big. First of all, they're both drinkers. I come from a long line of alcoholics.
I like it.
So my dad was homeless for many years. For a decade, he was living on the streets. He's been sober now for 15. He's 80 years old. So it's got a good ending. But my aunt would drink, and whenever she would drink, she would put in Diana Ross and Donna Summer, and she would just dance around, and Kenny Rogers, and they were like the 8 tracks, you know what I mean, or the cassettes, as I remember, maybe the 8 tracks or cassettes, and like she would dance around and want us to dance with her, and that was my early intro to some of that music. My dad, my dad was never really into music, really, my dad.
Into drinking.
He was too busy. Yeah, he was too busy.
Okay, so
when did you get into comedy? Like, who was the first
comedian you remember listening to or hearing about? Or
probably like it was Richard Pryor and George Carlin.
Yeah.
were the first that I had ever heard. And in high school, Eddie Murphy was like, he put out that special, was it Delirious?
Yeah, there was Delirious and Raw. I saw one of the two tours. I can't remember.
Yeah, Delirious was the one he was wearing the red, I think. So that was like.
I saw the purple jumpsuit tour.
Yeah, the purple one, but that was the Raw one, I think the purple one.
Yes.
But the first one, Delirious, was like, I thought that was amazing. I mean, at the time, I thought it was, I still think that was unbelievable what he did. And then for him to just get out of stand-up altogether was kind of shocking, but he obviously didn't need to keep doing stand-up because his career obviously parlayed into other things. But, so those are the first Rodney Dangerfield and, but what made me get into comedy is because I could remember watching The Tonight Show with Carson, and my dad would always watch that. And I could remember having similar thoughts of like the monologues, like some of the jokes, like that way of thinking, that, and then I was like, oh, it's just something I always, wanted to try. That's how that kind of all started.
So did you think about that as a kid? Like, I might want to try comedy. Or was it later in life that you were like,
junior high? I think junior
really?
high was I could remember being in the library in junior high with a bunch of friends. We were talking about, hey, what do you want to do when you're older? And I said I wanted to be a comedian. And I remember everybody laughed. And I remember thinking, oh, this is easy. You know what I mean? That was like my first laugh. So when I told them that's what I wanted to do. It's a good thing I didn't start singing right then. I'll tell you that.
Did you have an inkling that was a career path, that it was something, or is it just being young and going, I want to do that? Because like when I was a kid, I guess Steve Martin maybe was huge, but you didn't really think that everybody had TV shows, and big TV shows. I found out many years later, like, oh, they were even Sanford and Son. I didn't know Red Fox was a comedian, and you find out that that's what they parlayed all that into. Did you know that there was a such thing as stand up when you're thinking about that in junior high? No,
it's funny. You don't really realize the path. You don't even know how to go about it. So, yeah, I didn't know how I was going to get there at that moment. So when I got up into high school, I kind of had forgotten about it a little bit. I had gotten into law enforcement for many years. 7 years, I was in my 20s. I was a cop in rural Maine. I was a deputy sheriff.
Oh, wow.
So that's what I did before I went over to wanting to try comedy. And then I left. So it was 1997 was the last time I worked, but did that. But yeah, so it was just one of those things where I was working in the schools, with kids. I was, being up in front of them made me like being up in front of people. And then I just said, I'm going to go try this open mic thing. So I drove down to Boston, Massachusetts for the first time ever to try 3 minutes of stand up. And then when you're there, it's like, oh, you sign up 3 minutes, you do your 3 minutes, and then you can sign up again. And 6 months later, you can come back and do another 3 minutes. So it was one of those kind of things. And when I did my first 3 minutes, I didn't tell anybody in case I bombed.
Smart.
So I went on and it went surprisingly well. Like, I'd written 3 minutes of material and I got laughs and I'm like, wow, I can't wait to come back. And the second time I had told a whole bunch of people. So they all drove down. I had, I don't know how many, 30, 40 people that all came down to see me. So I go up and I do my show and it did not go as well as the first time. And to the point where, to compensate sometimes, you drop the F-bomb because you think that's going to help it, which it really doesn't help the joke if it's not funny. Especially when I dropped too many F-bombs in 3 minutes. I don't know how many I dropped, but the guy who hosted, this guy named Vinny, comes back up. And, I remember one of the jokes was I had a sport coat on, like a new sport coat, and I left the tag on it. And I tried to do some joke about how the tag was still on the sport coat, and that bombed. So I grab so I say goodnight, and I'm sweating. I dropped all those F-bombs. He grabs the mic and he just calls to me. He goes, hey, Justin, he goes, next time, why don't you try throwing a few fucks in there? He goes, maybe that'll get him. Right. Totally like slamming me. Big laugh. Right. And he goes, he points to the tag on my coat to be like, that didn't work or whatever. And he's making fun of my coat. And I tried to make fun of his coat, which said Giggles Comedy Club. Or no, Nick's Comedy Stop. And I go, oh, what's that, Nick's? He goes, yeah, it's a place where I get paid to do comedy, right? Another big laugh. So he basically roasted me. So I bomb in front of my friends. Then he roasts me in front of all them. So I go to the back of the room and didn't know what hit me. And then the next comedian that went up. He was on the last time I was there, and he did the same jokes he did 6 months ago. And I remember thinking, I was like, you can do that? Like, I didn't know you repeat material. Like, I didn't know that you could polish your act. And so I went up with a whole new 3 minutes. So that 3 minutes, I didn't know I could have done the 3 I did last time that got laughs. So that was my intro, my hard lesson, because even now, a lot of people don't realize that comedians, I mean, you do improv and you work on stuff, but you're writing, it's observations, it's material. You're writing, you're taking bits. It's, it's a work in progress. I mean, you can do crowd work and that's part of it. But at the end of the day, you got to have material.
And it must have been brutal. Like, what years are you speaking of here? Like the year when you were going to Boston to do open mics? Because I know Boston can be a brutal.
Yeah, this was the early 90s.
Okay.
Right? So it would have been the early 90s. So like 92, 93.
So you're stepping into a hornet's nest going down there just
yeah.
your career, which is probably.
And there were so many good, and the Boston comedians, you got it right. I mean, they were strong and they were like bang, bang, set up, punch, set up, punch, set up, punch. And so many great comedians came out of Boston. And yeah, it was the place Stitches isn't around anymore. But yeah, it was crazy. But I think it was good for me to bomb in front of my friends because it almost motivated me to be like, all right, I'm not going out that way. I'm not going to be, I'm not going to be sitting down 20 years from now and have them go, hey, remember when you tried stand up? You know what I mean? So it was just humiliating. So I'm like, I got to get somewhere, I got to, it can't end here.
So I want to talk more about comedy, but we can't skip past the law enforcement days. What was
how
did you get into that? Is it something you're like, I need a job, I'll do this? Or was it something you were into? And what's it like being a cop?
So it's interesting. So I didn't want, in high school, I didn't want to be a cop. Okay. I wanted to be possibly a private investigator. So I asked my guidance counselor at my high school to set me up with a job shadow with an investigator, private investigator. And she's like, well, I couldn't find an investigator, but you can do a ride along with the local PD. You can do a ride along. So this officer picks me up and I go out with him for the night and I got it. So here I am. And this guy was a great cop, right? He's like, he's all about people, community policing. He wasn't a jerk. He was nice. He was talking all about, being out here and, when people are sleeping, like he's the only one. If there's an emergency, he's got to come and save the day. He's like how he almost took pride in being that person to save the day and risk his life. It was just, I really was blown away by him. So I got out of the car that night after riding with this guy and I was like, this is what I want to do. And ironically, my whole family had run-ins with the law. They all been arrested. My dad, my aunt kicked the cop in the nuts. My brothers, they've all been pepper spray. I mean, they all hate cop. I mean, it's all run-ins with the law. So when he dropped me off, I didn't even have him drop me off at my house because I didn't want him to know who my dad was. So I had him drop me off around the corner because I didn't want him to know that was my dad. And then I walked around the corner. So long story short, so I go to school for law enforcement and I got hired at 19, which was, I think, the youngest that they'd ever. I know it was the youngest that my department had ever hired. I mean, it's really too young, to be honest. But I have
to say that's crazy.
It's crazy young. But I was, because of my upbringing and the way I grew up. I was much more mature. I could argue I was more mature then than I am now.
Yeah.
But I treated everyone, like they didn't. And I remember saying this in the oral boards. I'm like, I treat people like they're like my dad or whatever, doesn't like cops. And I almost want to try to change their mind so that when I'm done, they leave and go, oh, all right, this guy. And that's how I went about it. So I was really, I would do jokes about being officer friendly. Like, people would be in the, how you flash your headlights if there's a cop running radar. And I'm like, warning them there's a cop back there. I would do that in my police car. Like, you know what I mean? Like I didn't want anyone getting tickets, So I would do stuff like that. But I really was, and it's so weird now to look at where it's evolved because it's in such a tough spot now because it's like no one wants to do the job now and I wouldn't want to do it now and I couldn't do it now. And but back when I did it, the guys for the most part, I know there's some of the best people I know are in law enforcement, and there's some douchebags and there's some people that probably shouldn't be cops, but there's such a minority. From my experience, and I even lived in New York and LA, and one of my buddies was like the chief of a huge department in Florida, and for the most part, but the bad ones do really, they shine. Like they take all of the, the limelight. So it's a really tough job. But like I said, it's been a long time since I did it. But I loved it when I did it. This comedy thing was just calling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet you were talking about how you're changing, trying to change the perception of the police around locally or whatever. It seems like a talent you could take into comedy because you're showing up somewhere and nobody knows who you are, and you're trying to convince them that you're funny and make them, turn around and make them like you. So it's probably maybe a little bit of carryover from that.
Yeah, a little bit. It's a little bit of winning people over, right? And it's a little bit of, dealing with, there was a technique that I would use. First of all, there was 2 of us for 500 square miles, right? So you had no back. Your backup it was an hour away.
Right.
So you're all by yourself. You're up in the woods. People have guns. You know what I mean? It's like this. So you take someone that you have to de-escalate to survive. Like you literally. Yeah. So I would be like, if there was somebody who was like, oh yeah, it was all hell bent on wanting to, be physical. I would just be like, look, you could kick my ass. I go, I weigh 140 pounds. I go, but what good is that? I go, then, there'll be 10 cops coming in. You'll end up getting in more trouble. I go, let's just go down. We'll figure it out. You can call so-and-so. And it's just human nature to just, if you make someone think that they, the whole machoism kicks in where people think, oh, I can kick this cop. Yeah, you can kick my ass. I admit it, and that immediately takes it down. And so I never had really any issues, with, talking people down. I had one person that I almost wanted me to shoot him. And I'm like, I'm not shooting you. He had a knife. And at 45 minutes, I talked him out of it. I go, I'm not shooting you. I go, you can stab me. I'm not doing it. And it was just this, and afterwards, he's like, oh, if it was any other cop, I'd be dead right now. So, you know what I mean? It was, so it was just I don't know. I think it's an important part of society, but you got to have the right people doing it. What makes me nervous now, as I was saying the other day to someone, it's never been a better time to be a criminal or someone who always wanted to be a cop but couldn't be a cop, because now I think they have to hire people. And I know this, even a few years ago, a buddy of mine was like, they're hiring people now they wouldn't have hired 5 years ago. So that's where I worry about the future. Like, I don't know how to turn it around. It's complex because someone's got to police us. You know what I mean? Someone has to be out there and do it. And but it's crazy.
Do you, since you were a police officer, do you worry about getting in trouble now? You can just use your buddies, to help get you out of trouble? No,
not really.
Secret handshakes or code words or anything like that.
What's the secret code word? I need to know it.
No, and you know what? And you'd be surprised. A lot of I know of 2 incidences where people, where cops, drunk driving. It's like there's a whole thing now. The professional courtesy. It's like, all right, if you're speeding, but I never gave tickets to anybody, so I'd let everybody off. I didn't have a department where you had to give tickets either, though, because but the idea of drinking and driving and I know of 2 instances where these people that were pretty high up both got charged, for, the cops weren't cutting them a break. It's like there is that mindset of you can't cross that line. What line are you crossing when it comes to certain things? But when it comes to speeding, it's like, just be, I don't know. It's just be, nice and not be, I mean, I don't know. Because if they got you speeding and you're an a-hole, guy's probably going to give you a ticket,
Mm-hmm.
I stopped a motorcycle going over 100 miles an hour one night. And he was going I think he was going 110, which, first of all, my car couldn't even go 110. So the fact that he pulled over was a miracle.
And pulled over and waited.
But I literally went up, I go way ahead, and he goes, I'm heading to a party. And I literally let him go because I knew he'd go to the party and be like, man, this car, I was going over 100. He gave me a warning. Because there was so much negative shit spewed about cops. And I'm like, this would be nice to go into a party and be like, because I heard it all when I'd go to parties younger, everyone, people have never loved cops, so it's always been this anti, they're buzzkills, right? They stomp on your fun and all this. So I was always that one trying to, in my small little way, to spread some cheer out there. And I just let the guy go. I'm not even giving you a ticket. He was like, he couldn't believe it.
They're always
110.
Always a buzzkill until you need them.
Yeah, I've had 16 speeding tickets. I haven't had one since I was 25, though.
Well, clearly you've been an asshole for 16 times then.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that I've been speeding 16 times. I mean, so if you're getting caught 16 times, you must speed all the time.
Well, I went to school every time and got it off the record, and it was Alive at 25. I had taken that class 4 times, and it was the 4th time. It was the day I turned 26, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to use cruise control from now on, and that's what I do. And I, haven't had one since because I just use cruise control.
There you go. And once you get, when you're young and you're getting those speeding tickets, those probably show up on the computer, and it's almost that mentality of this person's young. If they don't learn, you know what I mean? If they don't ever do it, and it gets you more, if you're 50, you've never had a speeding ticket, you're probably not going to get one.
Right.
Unless the guys, you know what I mean? Just because you've been driving all this time, you don't. So it's a little bit of that probably goes into it. But I never, that's why I got into comedy. I want people to be happy. I want people to be in a good mood. So I got more out of letting people go and making their day than ruining their day, and sometimes a ticket can do that. And a lot of times there's, when it comes to, economic situation, if somebody doesn't have the money to fix their car, or it's, they don't need a ticket like for a muffler that's, they need a coupon, it's like they need, so it's always that kind of thing that I think that we could do better. We talk about police reform because I'm all for police reform, working together and making it better. Defunding, I think, is a horrible idea. I think the whole branding of it's horrible. I think that it's created this, you're villain, you're making the cops the villains and the criminals are the victims. And it's become this whole big thing that I think is just a bad idea. It's just, I wish we could live in a world where we didn't need it, but it's a fantasy world. I mean, going through material every day, because I try to write jokes every day in my news feed, it is kidnapping, rape, murder, kidnapping, rape, murder. I mean, it's crazy if you look, and it's like, what are we going to have? No one, you know what I mean? It's like, what are we supposed to do? How do we solve this? So
yeah. The whole defund the police thing made no sense to me, and I wondered if it was just bad marketing, because somebody had to look at them and go, this is the wrong slogan, because they would always come out and go, we're not talking about actually defunding the police. And like, well, that's your slogan. Why are you putting it on posters then? They could have come up with a better line, I think, at least.
Yes, and that's the argument, and it's true. Like when you talk about taking some of the funding and maybe, but the problem is there are people who do want to defund the police and do want to abolish the police. Like that is out there. Like just totally get rid of them. So it's created. I think those people
aren't thinking very much. They're not deep thinkers. They're not deep thinkers. They're very surface thoughts.
You need more training, not less. Like I was, there were 2 of us for 14 towns. I was defunded before it was ever a thing. I mean, my police car had 250,000 miles on it. It was very hard for us to solve crime because we didn't have enough manpower to even solve crime. And, I had a line in my act where I'd say, there'd be a burglary and someone would say, hey, what are the chances of you catching this guy? And I'd say if he turned himself in 50-50, because I mean, it was just, we didn't have crime scene tape back then. I mean, I made my first Tonight Show appearance on Jay Leno was all about being a small town cop. And I talked about it. So it's like, be careful what you wish for. Like, I'm like the hostage negotiator. I don't even know what I'm doing. I had a guy take himself hostage. I just left, It's like, I heard he let himself go,
It's hilarious. So transitioning back into comedy, you do some open mics in Boston. Where does it go from there? Like you say you did good, kind of bombed. Clearly you decided you were going to go for it. So how long did it take before you started submit? And was there anybody in your class or just above your class that you learned from or kind of took you under their wing or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, there was a good core of people in Boston. At the time. I mean, Dane Cook and like, I don't know, you probably heard of Dane Cook and like, he was with the group Al and the Monkeys. They're like Robert Kelly and Al Delbeni and, Bill Burr and like Patrice O'Neill and all those guys were like around. Gary Goldman and this buddy of mine, Rick D'Elia and Dave McLaughlin and all these names. I don't know if you've heard of Wayne Previty, Pete Cumming. There was a whole group of us back then.
We've talked to a couple
that kind of helped each other out. And just, you're like, oh, there's a gig over here. There's a show over here. Or take this guy's name out. He's got a Wednesday night. This guy's got a Thursday night. This guy's got a one-nighter every month. So you just learn what's out there. And it was all about stage time, right? You just had to get on stage as many times as you can. So that's what I tried to do while I stayed on part-time on the sheriff's department. So I would go up and work a shift, and then I would come down in Massachusetts. It was in the Boston area. And then a good buddy of mine, Al Ducharme, this is after I'd been doing it 2 or 3 years. He told me about this manager in New York City at New York Comedy Club. Actually, Stand Up New York was the name of it. Stand Up New York. This guy, Kerry Hoffman, was a club owner and a manager. And he told me he's looking for clients. So send him a tape. So I sent him a tape, and he called me up after looking at the tape, and he said, "Hey, I want to talk to you about managing you. I want you to come down to New York." So I was immediately like, okay, this is good news. And at the very same time, I started doing college shows, these NACA conferences where you perform in front of all the bookers in each region to try to get college gigs. My college agent knew a agent at Don Buchwald Agency in New York City, a commercial agent, to audition for acting commercials. She wanted to see me, and she's like, I want to see you do stand-up. And I'm like, well, I don't work any of the clubs in New York City. And she goes, well, I'll get you on at the Comic Strip Live. Just, just tell me when you can come down. So she set up a spot for me at the Comic Strip Live. So when I was there, she came to watch me. The booker of that club was in the room. So I get off stage. She's like, I want to sign you right in front of this guy who books the club. Right when she's saying, I want to sign you, he's like, well, when you come down, I'll start giving you spots. So I'd gotten in at some of these clubs before I'd even moved to New York City.
Nice.
So that was how it kind of happened. So I had gotten in a bunch of these clubs, and then within a year, it happened really fast in the late 90s for me. Within a year, I'd gotten an agent out of LA who got me at 1998. I got my first development deal for my own sitcom with Warner Brothers. So it was like, it happened really fast.
What's it like? I'm always curious, what's it like for someone that gets a development deal and the show doesn't get picked up? Because I've been a part of like that in music a long time ago. And you're like, you get it and you're like, oh yeah, here we go. I've finally made it. And you do all this work, and then you realize all this work you've done, somebody else owns, and you just, if they decide they don't like it, you out everything.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because, because you kind of, once the idea doesn't make it, it's like it's dead. And you're like, well, it was still funny. Just because it didn't work because of politics or whatever, it's still a good idea. So in 98, I got the one with Warner Brothers. So they had me meet with all these showrunners. I pick one, we write the pilot. Some politics took place in my first deal. The head of Warner Brothers had left, and the new guy that came in. So it's a little try to make it simplified for the audience. But so the deal was with Warner Brothers, but then CBS was the network that had optioned it, or whatever they call that word. So, but when the head of Warner Brothers left, the new guy supposedly didn't get along with the head of CBS, a guy named Leslie Moonves. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Yep.
So Leslie Moonves didn't get along. So it was told to me, they're like, oh, the last thing he's going to do is make one of this guy's shows right when he takes over Warner Brothers. He's not going to put one of his shows on the air. So I was like the bad luck. Like it just took bad luck, but they still paid me, which was nice. I still was like, all right, let's pick myself back up. Then I had another development deal the next year with this other comedian named John DeResta. We signed a deal with CBS this time. So nothing to do with Warner Brothers, just CBS. This one looked like it was really going to go. We picked the showrunner, and unknown to us, before our pilot was ever read by Les Moonves, the head of CBS, this showrunner we saw it in the trades. He had a show that did get picked up. So he was working on 2 shows. We didn't know it at the time. A show called Yes, Dear. Remember that show with Anthony Clark and Michael Melly? Yep. So that show gets picked up. So this John calls me up and he goes, "Did you see the trades today about the?" And I go, "Yeah." I go, "What do you think of that?" He goes, "I don't think it's good." Right. And sure enough, it's not good because they don't want him doing 2 shows at once. He's spread too thin. So they held us, and for extra time, they held us longer just in case anything happened with casting and that show didn't happen. They would make our show, because we were quoted, CBS was quoted in Variety magazine that our show is a top priority. Like I was told off the record, can we just say your show is our favorite show of the year? That's how close I got. Like, I've got the network. Our show is right up there. And because of this other show getting picked up, maybe we picked the wrong showrunner. I don't know. But that was that. So that's it. Yeah, both of those deals never happened. And to make matters worse, I might as well I feel like I tell this story a lot because if I'm talking about my story, it's part of my story. But so all of the money I had made, I had met this waiter at Dangerfield's Comedy Club that was a part-time stockbroker, and I'd given him all the money in the crash of 2000, so I lost it all. So when you talk about everything I worked for, I got the deals, I got the money, I could have bought property, I could have done whatever I wanted, and really been set up for my career. Lost it all. So that ran me into a 4 or 5 year depression of when I moved in LA. I'm walking around, it's sunny every day. And like, it was like I got hit by a truck. And when I did Jay Leno in 2002, I was at an all time low, depression wise. I couldn't believe, so I didn't even enjoy it. It would have been the highlight of my career. So that was so there were some dark years there because of getting those breaks. I would have been better if I never got the breaks. You know what I mean? I really would have been better if I never got that money because it really screwed me. I mean, to this day, I'm feeling it. I mean, I'm still not recovered, not even close,
I can imagine it's hard to, and again, it's the same deal in the music. I guess it's the entertainment business, but there's so many bands that have gotten signed, made a record, the label head gets fired, new label head comes in, it's like, I am not fucking with any of those bands because I don't like that guy. And they don't care. It's just the way it works. And it's tough to get, and they don't care about burning the money, which I don't understand. It's like, well, the record's already made. Put it out. You don't have to put a lot of promotion behind it, but they spend so much money to do nothing with stuff. It's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, it's a very similar thing, isn't it? It's like we're both creating, whether it's music or comedy, you're creating content, and you're just hoping for the break. You're hoping for things to fall the right way, and there's no guarantee they're going to. And how many times am I out somewhere? I'm at the musical open mic in my town of Newmarket, New Hampshire on Sunday night, and the amount of talent that's up there singing. It's like, I'm just like half of these people I feel like could be on the radio right now, And it's like, and there's just so much talent out there. And why do some people get the breaks and get those big breaks and everything just falls? And then other people, I don't know. I felt like I was cursed for a while. You know what I mean? It's like, and then other people, it's like they got a horseshoe, golden horseshoe up their ass where like everything they do is good,
Yeah.
And you got to be obsessed with music or comedy to keep doing it unless you hit it big, because we talk about it all the time. It's almost statistically impossible to make it in either of those. You just try to survive and be allowed to do it as long as you can. So you talk about those 4 or 5 years. A lot
of no's.
Yeah, you got to be able to hear no a lot.
A lot.
But how did you dig yourself out of that depression? Like you said, you got all this, you've got money enough to set yourself up. It gets blown away, and then you're kind of starting from scratch, even though you got experience and you're better at your craft. Like, how do you dig yourself out of that?
Well, geez, I'm still taking my
I understand.
So basically, I've been with my wife since 1995. So that's when I met her. I met her at a comedy club in Massachusetts. So we were doing the long distance thing. When I had left New York in in January of 2001, and she stayed back. And here I am doing my thing, and we kept the long distance thing. And here I was, I'd lost all this money. She knew I lost all this money. She's like, she still like wants to be with me. Like, even though she's there, I'm here. So she ended up moving back out, and we were just gonna, do it the old fashioned way where you gotta, there's no shortcuts. Let's just save money, down payment, buy a house, let's do this, so that's what we started to do in 01, 02. 03, 04. Well, by the time we had enough for a down payment to buy anything, it was like 2006. And the real estate in California was like, it was $500,000 for a 2-bedroom condo. Yeah. Like, you couldn't get anything. So that then we ended up moving back to, that's why I'm in New Hampshire. I've been in New Hampshire since 06.
Wow.
So this is why it was still like the knife turning, because I had to then leave. Look, if you're going to be a singer, or you're serious about it, you kind of is Nashville, would you say, is one of the places you could be in? Nashville, New York, LA, right? At least, especially back in the 90s and early 2000s. Maybe it's different now. Right. Maybe, but don't Austin. You have to kind of be where the business happens?
Yes.
Especially, so
this is before the internet had permeated everything, and everybody had it on their phone.
So here I am now. I'm wrestling with, all right, I'm kind of forced to have to move back where I really don't want to. So when I got back in 06, now I had done a couple of Lenos. I did an episode of The King of Queens while I was in LA, and I was starting to get back on my feet. I moved back to the first few years in New Hampshire. I had got a half-hour Comedy Central special. I did like the Blue Collar Tour Next Gen. I was on that, the new one with Bill Engvall.
Oh.
I got a 1-hour special on Comedy Central. So there were a few years. The Conan O'Brien, when Conan got the Tonight Show, I did that in 2010. So I was able to mask it enough where I'm like, all right, I'm gonna make this work. I'm gonna do the impossible. I'm gonna make it work from here. I had a kid. My first kid was born in 07. My second kid in 2010. So it's all about the kids now. But I still have this passion. I'm gonna try to make it work. So I finally went into therapy when 2010, when I got the Tonight Show with Conan. It was crazy because, well, first of all, he'd only had the show for a year, right? And I did the show on a Tuesday. I think Conan lost the show that week, that Thursday. Like literally, like talk about bad luck. My bad luck rubbed off on Conan. They gave the show back to Leno. But so a couple things happened on that Conan set. Number one, I didn't realize it was the first week of January. It was bowl week, right, at the college football. So everyone in the audience is dressed up in, I can't remember the teams, but it was all sports gear. They're all kids. Okay. It's not my audience, college kids anymore. Right now I'm, in my 30s. So, my opening line is, I'm at that age where all my friends are starting to have kids, right? Which I wouldn't have done in a million years if I knew it was going to be full of college kids. I wouldn't have done it. But once they approved the set, I can't call it audible. They're going to be really pissed. You know what I mean? I don't want to burn bridges. I got to just do what I'm doing. But here's what's the worst part about it. I'm talking to the booker like for 2 hours. I'm there 2 hours early. We're in the green room. He starts talking about what a fan he is and talks about my deals. Like he knew me back when I got the deal. So I start telling the story about the money I lost and da-da-da-da. Well, this is not good for my psyche right before I'm getting ready to hit the stage for the Tonight Show with Conan O'Brien. So already my head is, and when you talk about this stuff, like there's you can almost feel a sensation in your head. Like it almost takes over your brain, like whatever it's releasing, the cortisol or whatever that is, that the stress hormone. So I've got that going on. I walk out and I see nothing but college kids. So anyway, long story short, I hated my Conan set. So my first Leno set and my Conan set, I hated. But so when I got off stage after that set, I literally go, I got to go talk to somebody because this is the first time I went and talked to, a therapist after that to help me kind of grapple with, this whole underlying thing. So basically she diagnosed me with post-traumatic stress disorder, right? My mom died, right? My dad was a homeless alcoholic. I had all this money. I was set up really for life. If I just wasn't a moron, I would have been set. I lost. So all of this it's trauma, right? So cut to, I'm getting older. I'm like, you know what? This is all going to be over soon. So I might as well enjoy it. I mean, you end up just reaching a point where you're so beaten up where you're just like, all right, I just got to, so I'm in a better place now than I was definitely before 2010, but my point is I'd be lying if I said it didn't, it's still there. It's still in the back, but I'm doing way better now. But it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
It is absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, how much I let it affect me. And, and it bothers me that, I lost my mom. That should have been way more devastating than money. Like, why is this money thing so important? And I think it's because I had this vision. I had a plan. I was on the way to everything was lining up and it just got derailed. And then now, rather than, buying the place I lived at in New York, 2.5 family I could have bought in New York City. Like I could have bought it cash. Then I'm cut to 10 years later and I'm, almost 10 years later and I'm got a 30-year mortgage on a place in New Hampshire. You know what I mean? Which is, and I'm out in the middle of nowhere, and I'll talk about, like, I went to the state where people go to hide from the feds, like a Walter White from Breaking Bad and Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's partner. Like that's where they go to hide from the feds. That's where I went to take my comedy career to another level. So it's hard to wrap my head around, but it sounds cliche, but if you can just, think about what if you can see the good and not the bad, I think that's what that's what I'm trying to do now, and be like, look, I'm in my 50s now, and I'm healthy overall, and I'm able to do this, what I love to do, and make a living. And I haven't had, another job since, the 90s,
That's what my grandpa says. My grandpa says to, when you start feeling depressed, to start counting things you're thankful for. What are the good things, and if you can count 5 of them, then you're doing pretty good.
Yeah.
There's been many times, like we say all the time, or I say all the time, I won't make you say that you say it, but I say, not attached to outcome, not attached to the outcome. Anything can happen, not attached to it. But then something happens where you go to play a show and they're supposed to pay you $2,000 and then they just don't. And you're like, oh shit, I think I was attached to the outcome of that, because now I'm out and I have to pay my band's travel and pay them to play, and you're not paying me. And, so when money comes into it, it's a little harder to not be attached to the outcome.
Well, it can't be completely, because, I'm attached to being able to feed myself and eat at times too. So you got to have I'm attached to staying alive.
Yeah, that sounds a little, that outcome, that's like business. Like, you should be getting paid. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, that's just you getting screwed. Like, you should, what's the reason for someone to not pay you if they $2,000? Did they try to claim like
this was
attendance
a few years
or something?
ago.
This was a long time ago. But
well, his excuse was that things didn't batch.
He was waiting for the money to batch. And we're like, what is batch? And we just realized he was just making up a term. He's like, well, I've got the funds here. I'm waiting for it to batch in this account. And
we're like,
then he wrote us a bad check. But that's neither here nor there.
It's all over with and everything's fine now. But
I do think, to that point, I think the things that make me angriest are the ones that probably what bugs you about the money thing. It's not the money. It's that, I'm sort of responsible for that. Like your mother passing away, unless you murder her, I assume you didn't. You weren't responsible.
Well, I didn't want to bring that up, but now since you went there, yes.
I didn't want to bring that up either, just in case. No, but you know what I mean? It's like, some things you feel like life just fucked with you. Other things you're like, why did I do that? That was so stupid. But those are the hardest to let go.
Yes, it's so stupid. I had said on another podcast recently where it was like, because I had on paper like $750,000, right? This is in 99, 2000. So,
that's a lot of bread.
It's like I'd spent and I lost it all except for 10 grand. When I finally, so it's like I paid $750,000 for a face tattoo that said I'm a moron. And I kind of wish I had done that, because at least I'd have a story. Like, oh, what's that about? I paid $750,000 for this. Like, it's because I feel like, so you're right. It's, what am I listening? Now, in my defense, this waiter, I didn't give him, I gave him a little bit of money and he doubled it. I gave him a little more, he doubled that. I gave him a little more, he doubled that. So it was just growing, and I didn't realize, but here again, I'm an idiot. I didn't realize you have to pay capital gains tax when you're selling stocks like that, because I knew nothing about it. I didn't come from money. So I owed the IRS now a crap ton of money. So it just literally like wiped me out. And looking back, it just seems, if this guy never worked at that comedy club, who knows what the hell happens to my life? You know what I mean? It's crazy.
Yeah. Could have been much worse, though. You never know. Your dumb thing could have been getting in a car drunk and killing somebody. So,
that's what one of my buddies says all the time, because if you would have stayed out here, you might have died in a car crash. I'm like, it's pretty sad that's how you have to reason with it. Is the option had to be I would have been dead in a car crash. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. I couldn't have
It couldn't be like, oh, you just had a really great dinner and
exactly.
The other option.
Yeah,
the other option was a great dinner.
Stuff.
You bought a brand new house. You lived happily ever after.
Yeah, exactly. But I wouldn't have had, and that's, I talk about this with my wife, is like, well, if we would have, because I would have wanted to stay in LA another 4 or 5 years. And she's like, well, we wouldn't have had the kids. I'm like, we still would have had kids. She's like, well, they wouldn't have been these kids. And I'm like, and maybe they'd be better than these kids. Don't be so pessimistic, But she is right that they wouldn't be, and these kids are everything to me. You know what I mean? Like, if you put a gun to my head and said, all right, you can go back right now, but you don't have these kids. It's like, I'm not taking that deal. And sometimes, that's where I have to think about it. And that really helps get me through those damn kids, because they're great kids. They better stay great. Right. In the sense of, if they grow up and they hate me and They're a real pain in the ass. I'm
Yeah.
gonna be like, man, I wish I did die in that car crash.
Or just really big disappointments.
It's just boring.
Or just not
I
funny.
don't mind
Not
you know,
funny
that.
at all.
I don't mind. I
Ugly,
mean, it's
fat.
just yeah.
Can you imagine if they were ugly and fat? Oh.
Well, it's funny you bring that up. They are ugly and fat. But geez, I mean, come
Now I
on.
think I
Now
wanna go
you're
back.
making me feel really.
Yeah, I'm going back.
It sounds like I have kids your age. My boys are 15. I have twins, and then I have a girl that's almost 13.
Oh wow, yeah, it's a crazy time. Yeah, a freshman. So you have a freshman?
I have my boys are in 10th grade, and
Okay.
then my daughter is 7th grade.
Okay, yep. So I have a 7th and 9th, but he could have been in 10th. He was right on the bubble.
Yeah.
So we could have, had him go. He could have been the youngest in his class or the oldest. So
How was he during his 8th grade year? Because that was my worst year ever as a human being. I was raising hell. I don't know if that's a normal thing, but my
think it's
8th grade
just
year,
you.
maybe so.
well, they got they ran from the cops for the first time this summer. That was a first.
All right.
Okay.
But it was so innocent. The police just showed up. They were at the rec after dark. You can't be at the rec center. They got like a splash pad, and they don't want people loitering. At the rec center. So the cops just literally pull up to say, "Hey guys, you can't be here." Well, one of them yells "cops," and they all like take off in the woods.
It's
So
just trained.
it's just and they don't even know why, right? They just run.
Yeah.
So
I did that
I
as a
pull
kid.
up and
Totally did that.
the cops are laughing. And I'm like, yeah, I'm supposed to pick up my kids, and they're laughing. They're like, one of them yelled "cops." They all ran from us because they left their bikes. One of them left the phone. They left backpacks. They left all their stuff. They just ran into the woods.
At that age, you hear cops and you're just
so
like,
we're just
going to
laughing
jail."
about it. So I got to call my kid, and I'm like, Jack, where are you? He's like, we're in the woods. I'm like, why? Because the cops came. I don't know. Someone yelled "cops." We just started running. It's like a reflex, right? I don't know. So now I got to go. They just want to tell you can't be here. I go, come on out. So I'm talking them out like I'm a hostage negotiator back on the force. One at a time, I'm talking them out of the woods, like with they're coming out with their hands up. I'm like, you're not in trouble. I go, they're just going to. So it's just this whole big thing. And then what's funny is cut to later that my 12-year-old. So then we're home that night. He's like, Mom, can you get me a glass of water? I'm like, you know what? If you can run from the cops, you can get your own friggin' water. That's when you showed a whole new level of independence tonight.
You're a man now.
That's great. Okay, so before we let you go, I got to ask, what's the first time you remember hearing about my grandpa? Or do you know my grandpa, Willie Nelson? Have you heard about him?
Of course, yes. I'm a huge fan. Loved the music. Back when I was a kid, on the road, and I loved your grandpa, but I was probably, I would have to say teens, right?
Okay.
Like probably like 12, 13. Always on my mind was like. You know what I mean? I still remember that first time. Always on my mind. I'm telling you right now. You want me to sing it? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, let's hear it.
No. But yeah, I would say, it's always. I like. I'm not a huge. I like almost all genres, but I'm not like heavy metal, like loud. I don't like as much as if I'm going to go somewhere now. Maybe it's because I don't know if it's because I'm getting older, but I think I've always been this way. But you give me like acoustic or guitar, or that's why I'm even drawn to country music a lot. It's a little more sort of, maybe I'm not a huge loud music person, and I don't know if that's just me. I have a theory that I don't think when you go into a club or whatever and they're blaring the music, I don't think anyone likes it that loud. I think it's just that loud, and people just go with it because it's cool. But do you really? Is it me, or it's just always seems too loud?
Yeah, you can't talk. You definitely can't have a
You
conversation.
can't talk. Maybe that's it too, because I'm a talker, and you're just yelling. Then you get done at night. But yeah. So I wish I could tell you where I was. Like it was like one of those. Do you remember where you were the first time you heard?
August 14th, 1976.
I was running from the cops into the woods.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool. Yay. Thank you so much for doing this with us. You have a special coming out soon?
Yeah. It just came out now, and this is my
Perfect.
This is my fifth 1 hour special that I've done. I've got some on Prime. I did the Comedy Central one. I did an hour and a half hour on Comedy Central, but this one I put right on YouTube.
Perfect.
So it's free.
Yeah.
And a lot of comics are doing that right now, and I think it's working really well on just introducing me to people that have never heard of me. And so it's there. So my name is Juston with an O. So if people search it, I think if you put just Juston with an O, Juston, comedian, I think I'm going to pop up.
Right.
But it's so far it's been out for 2 weeks, and it seems to have been a good idea for me.
How was the experience as opposed to doing all the other specials for other people? Was it easier, more freeing? You didn't have to check with anybody clearly on the material. What did you prefer doing it this way?
Yeah, I mean look, to be honest, it's a little bit of, it's really hard to get. There's only so many options you can get now. So it wasn't like someone, came to me with a suitcase full of money, said we want your special. It's a really saturated thing. So this was I've sold them right on my website as well. Like that's a way you can do it. And I've done that, but it was just an idea of the economy right now and everyone's struggling. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to put it out for free. I mean, there is part of that is nice. You didn't have to clear it with anybody I mean, that is nice. And here's the other thing, like the one I had, my 1 hour Comedy Central special, Warner Brothers owned it. So I can't even put those clips on my social media. They'll flag them. It's like me, and it's like they own the recording. So I was thinking about re-recording all that material because they own like 3 of the Blue Collar Comedy Tour they own. So there's like almost an hour and a half of material that I can't put out anywhere.
That's not a bad idea. Re-record it. Prince did that. Just re-record.
And didn't Taylor Swift?
Yeah. Taylor Swift.
She sure did.
Yeah.
Everybody got it. Yep. Everybody loves it.
But the problem is I gotta make sure that all right, just go along with me. We just had our first child, because they're like, what? No, you didn't. Your kid's in high school now. You know what I mean? I go, no, this is the old stuff.
Just film it kind of blurry and maybe chop off the side so it's in the old format, and then just tell them it's old.
Yeah, and
make the quality subpar a little bit.
I don't know, and I don't think I'd record all of it, but maybe an hour, the hour and a half, I'd like to be able to share.
Yeah, it makes
because it's all content, and it's and I'm sure it's just like with music, you got to always keep having new stuff and fresh stuff, and stuff people haven't seen.
Yeah, that's the only drag about the new way of doing things, because we've been independent our whole time, like produce our own records, make our own videos, that kind of thing. The only problem with that is you have to do everything. Which is great, but sometimes it's like, I just wish somebody was handling this for me. It's done now.
So you're in Nashville?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Well, so did you play around Nashville all the time?
We try not to, but it's just too much. Too many people are doing it here. So there's great shows happening every single night of the week. We did just play here last week for Americana Fest at the 5 Spot, and I love the 5 Spot.
Yeah. Great clubs, but we make so much more money out of town.
Sure.
If you live here.
Well, I'm going to check out your tour schedule because I want to come see you.
I don't know if you want to because we're kind of loud. And you said you don't like loud music.
Well,
I mean, how loud? How loud? Like,
I'm just kidding.
You turn down for no man.
That's true. We're not talking Motorhead loud or The Who or anything like that.
Listen, here's the thing. I can put like the earplugs. Yeah. And then that's all I do. Because a really good friend of mine is in a heavy metal band, and I go to see them, but I put the earplugs in.
It's not heavy metal loud. I would.
You know what it could be? It could be I might have a sensitivity, which I think some people have that, right? To sound like, it's really, because it's almost like, I mean, it's almost like uncomfortable. Not that it hurts, but it's almost like I'm going to get a headache. But I'm talking about I'm talking about loud music is what I can't. But I mean,
it's not going to be that loud.
But I used to go to, Tesla. I love Tesla.
The car?
The band.
No, Tesla, the band.
I didn't know there was a band named Tesla. Sorry.
Come on. You don't know Tesla?
Is that what he named the car after?
Yes. No. He named the car after the band. Elon Musk loved the band Tesla.
Elon Musk loved Tesla. Yes. Loved the band Tesla. So he named this car.
Are you guys fucking with me?
No.
Modern day cowboy.
Yeah.
He heard modern day cowboy.
He's like, that's my theme song. I feel like
I'm a cowboy of a modern day. But anyway, Tesla is loud, and I am going to see them the next time they're around. So it's not that I don't, but it's They're
still great, by the way.
And by the way, Uh,
Oh man. Okay, well, Justin, thank you so much for doing this with us. We're not going to keep you any longer. It's been an hour. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks for doing this, man. This
If
was
you come to Nashville, let us know.
Yeah, you need to just pack the family up and come to Nashville for it.
I've never been to Nashville.
Yes, you have to go to Zanies. You should go to Zanies and do a show there.
Yes, I should. Back before I was touring the Funny Bones and the Improvs, all those comedy clubs all over the place. And I think I'd had a date or two in Nashville in the past, but it had gotten moved. And now I don't do as many clubs. I do more like, I stay more local. So I'm not, unless I'm doing a corporate gig, but I should get out that way. And I might look to do that. And I will look you guys up.
Okay, cool.
Fantastic. And we can't wait to see the new special. Everybody check that out.
Yeah, check it out. Thanks, man.
Awesome. Well, thank you. It's called On the Bright Side.
I like that already.
Yeah.
It's my last name.
Jonathan Bright over here. Justin with an O-N.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Bye. Juston McKinney is my favorite comedian.
Yeah, man. Wild stories.
Yeah.
Being a cop and a comedian. Insane.
We haven't had that on yet.
Have not had that on. He needs to come to Nashville and hang out with us. Anyway, enjoy your groceries.
Don't be an asshole.
I know your mama's name.
Did we cheers yet?
Enjoy your old cigarette.